Beloved listeners, settle your shoulders. Let your breath fall a little heavier. You are stepping into a space meant not for noise, but for truth. I welcome you the way an old traveler welcomes someone who finally found the right road. Not with celebration, but with quiet understanding. You are here because some part of you knows you cannot keep living on the surface of yourself. You are here because your future self has been calling you for a while now, softly, patiently, persistently. Today we sit together and speak about the snowball effect of personal growth, not as an idea, not as a slogan, but as the lived reality of anyone who has ever rebuilt themselves one difficult inch at a time. And I'll tell you right at the start, growth is not glamorous. It is not an Instagram highlight reel. It is not a breakthrough every week or a revelation every morning. It is slow, sometimes excruciatingly slow. It is repetitive. It is lonely. And yet, if you stay with it long enough, if you keep rolling the snowball when it's small, stubborn, and unimpressive, something remarkable begins to happen. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but inevitably. You start to feel the weight of your own progress. You start to see the momentum that took so long to build. And eventually, the effort that once felt heavy becomes natural. The changes that once felt forced become obvious. The person you once imagined becomes the person you are. But before we get there, before the momentum, the breakthroughs, the satisfaction, we must talk about what truly creates the snowball effect of personal growth. Those first few flakes of snow. Those tiny, almost laughable decisions you make when no one is watching. Those moments where you choose not the exciting path, but the disciplined one. Those quiet refusals to repeat the same mistake again. Growth rarely begins with an explosion. More often, it begins with quiet honesty. The kind that makes you realize your life is not going to fix itself. The world conditions us to crave big shifts, dramatic transformations, overnight improvement. But anyone who has lived long enough knows that real change is more humble. It begins when you stop lying to yourself. When you stop postponing your own evolution. When you stop hoping that some external force will save you from the consequences of your own patterns. That moment, when you finally tell yourself the truth, is the first flake of snow. That is when you bend down, gather the cold, wet handful in your palms, and whisper to yourself, "This time, I follow through." But most people never begin. And it's not because they lack potential, or intelligence, or resources. They don't begin because they are trapped by inertia. A person can spend years stuck not because they are incapable of moving, but because staying the same feels safer than confronting the unknown. That is the quiet tragedy of human nature. We prefer familiar suffering over unfamiliar possibility. The friction of comfort is powerful. It convinces you that your current life, even if it drains you, is predictable and thus survivable. But predictability is not the same as fulfillment, and surviving is not the same as living. Growth begins the moment you become willing to disturb your own stagnation. The beginning is the hardest because the snowball is small. Every push feels like a struggle. Every choice feels like a negotiation. You question whether it's worth it. You question whether anyone will notice. You question whether you're even capable of becoming someone better. The truth spoken with the bluntness of someone who has lived through it is this: the beginning will feel like failure. You will not be consistent. You will not be perfect. You will not feel powerful. You will feel clumsy, uncertain, slow. But that is precisely what makes those early steps so valuable. The discipline you build in the beginning is worth more than the results. The character you forge in the early friction becomes the foundation of everything that follows. People imagine personal growth as gaining new skills or living a more productive lifestyle. But skill without character is unstable. Productivity without purpose is hollow, and discipline without identity is temporary. True growth requires that you build from the inside out, not by stacking more knowledge, but by strengthening the structure that holds your choices together. Character is the real engine of the snowball, and character is built in the smallest, most unglamorous decisions. The decision to show up when no one will praise you. The decision to resist the easy path when the harder path aligns with your values. The decision to be honest when dishonesty would save face. The decision to slow down when your ego wants speed. The decision to finish something you promised yourself you would finish. These decisions compound just like money does. A small act of discipline today makes it easier tomorrow. A moment of integrity now nudges you toward deeper integrity later. A single day where you honor your word becomes a week, then a month, then a new identity. Identity, the quiet architect behind every habit you keep, and every habit you fail to keep. You do not achieve your goals because you write them down. You achieve your goals because you become the kind of person who naturally aligns with those goals. You succeed not by forcing your behavior, but by transforming the self that generates your behavior. When you say to yourself, "I am the kind of person who sees things through," your actions bend to match that identity. When you tell yourself, "I am the kind of person who thinks long-term," your decisions shift accordingly. The snowball grows when your identity changes. Because once your identity shifts, momentum no longer requires motivation. It becomes automatic. But identity change does not come without conflict. In fact, you should expect resistance. Your old self has a strong survival instinct. It will pull at you with familiar temptations. It will whisper excuses that sound reasonable. It will remind you of past failures and try to convince you that you haven't changed at all. This conflict is not a sign you're failing. It is a sign you're evolving. Growth is a negotiation between who you have been and who you intend to become. And one of them must eventually surrender. The snowball effect requires that you consistently choose the version of yourself that is aligned with your long-term future, even when the short-term emotional cost feels steep. There is a moment after weeks or months of steady effort when the friction begins to lessen. The mind adapts. The emotions stabilize. The habits become smoother. What once required effort begins to require only awareness. What once felt like self-discipline begins to feel like self-respect. And that is when the snowball starts rolling on its own. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. Yet, even here, many fall into a subtle trap. They confuse motion with progress. Motion is busy. Motion feels productive. Motion satisfies the ego. But progress is slow, deliberate, and often uncomfortable. Motion is attending workshops, reading books, collecting information, planning endlessly. Progress is taking a single step that might expose you to failure. It is sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it. It is confronting your flaws instead of distracting yourself from them. The wise understand that one imperfect action beats 1,000 perfect theories. The snowball grows only when you stop thinking about pushing it and actually begin pushing it. You learn more from doing poorly than thinking brilliantly. You grow more from one day of disciplined action than from a month of lofty intentions. And as you do this, day after day, month after month, something extraordinary compounds: self-respect. The quiet, unshakable sense that you are someone you can rely on. Self-respect cannot be faked, borrowed, or gifted. It is earned. Each time you do what you said you would do, you add a small flake to the snowball of your inner strength. Each time you hold yourself accountable, you add another. Over time, self-respect becomes a gravitational force that pulls your entire life upward. It protects you from self-sabotage. It sharpens your judgment. It narrows your tolerance for chaos. It deepens your standards. This is the slow transformation that people around you won't notice at first. You start speaking differently, thinking differently, carrying yourself differently. You're less reactive, more intentional, more grounded, more patient, more discerning. You stop seeking validation and start seeking alignment. You stop chasing excitement and start cultivating meaning. The shifts are subtle but powerful. They are the quiet signatures of someone who has been compounding for a long time. But growth also has a cost. Outgrowing versions of your life that once made sense. As you evolve, certain friendships no longer fit. Certain habits feel too small. Certain conversations become draining. Certain environments feel heavy. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. You are not abandoning people. You are honoring your trajectory. You are not becoming prideful. You are becoming precise. The loneliness of growth is temporary, but the regret of stagnation lasts a lifetime. Eventually, the momentum becomes undeniable. You cross a threshold where the person you used to be cannot pull you backward anymore. You have accumulated too much discipline, too much clarity, too much self-awareness. Your snowball has grown too large to be derailed by the small obstacles that once shattered your progress. People around you begin to say things like, "You've changed," without realizing that change was the entire point. They see the results now, but not the countless invisible days that built those results. They see the momentum, but not the moments you pushed the snowball in freezing conditions when no one cared. And here is the final truth. The snowball effect of personal growth never ends. It only expands. Every day adds a small flake of character, discipline, wisdom, patience, and self-respect. Every decision builds upon the last. Every challenge strengthens the core. Every choice compounds the trajectory. The mountain you are rolling down is long, but gravity eventually joins your cause. The same world that once resisted your growth begins to reward it. Beloved listener, as we reach the end of this shared reflection, I leave you with this truth spoken slowly and sincerely. You do not need a miracle to change your life. You need a beginning. A small one, a quiet one, a humble one. The power is not in the size of the first step, but in your refusal to stop stepping. Your life is a snowball waiting for direction. Bend down, gather the first handful, and begin the long, patient, extraordinary roll toward the person you were always meant to become.